All right, welcome everyone. We will get started. Today's webinar you've joined us for is Audit Success Secrets, the Power of Strategic Planning and Commitment. So I am your host today, Denise Webster. I oversee the Food Safety and Training Consulting Department at SCS Consulting Services. And today, my background is 28 years in the food industry, in food safety, quality, commercialization, and regulatory compliance. And today's speaker will be Hina Patel. Hina, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Denise. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Hina Patel. I'm the Director of Consulting and Technical Services with Food Safety Consulting Division at SCS Consulting Services. I've been working in the food industry for over 25 years. I've conducted many GFSI level audits over the years, and now I have moved into consulting role that happened a couple of years ago. And I'm putting programs together for the sites and setting them up for success. So welcome to the webinar.
Excellent, thank you, Hina. Just for those of you that are joining us the first time, at SCS, we are a leading provider of certifications in the food industry, sustainability, forestry, and also product claims and many other types of audits, as well as, of course, our training and consulting side, which Hina and I work with to help support all of our clients' needs. Next. We do this by having our offices and affiliates across the world in order to ensure we are able to optimally service those regions. Next. And here is just a little bit list of our key services for you to peruse through at a later time. Okay, go ahead. Next slide.
Okay.
So today we will be focused on Global Food Safety Initiative and making sure that we are focused on audit compliance. And so I'll go ahead and I will turn that over to Hina and you guys can start.
Okay, thank you. So this is just a quick overview of GFSI level standards. Many of you must be familiar with these standards, and I think, you know, some sites must have been audited against these standards. These are some of the standards and schemes that fall under the Global Food Safety Initiative umbrella, and these are S2F, BRC, FSSC 22000, Global Gap, and also Timeless GFSI. And these are some of the common standards used in USA, and the sites have been certified against. As you know, there has been a significant trend in the food industry over the years, right? Initially, companies had started with smaller audits, such as conducting GMPs, warehouse inspections, gap audits. Now customers and retailers are asking for more comprehensive audits, such as GFSI level audits, and it takes time to prepare and plan for these types of audits. So it becomes pretty extensive, and that's why this webinar will be covering more about how you can pre-plan and how you can work with a team and ask senior management for commitment. And we'll be covering lots of information more in detail as we go through the slides. So I hope that it will be helpful, and you know, you can take information away to build your own food safety program. Quick overview of GFSI level audits is based on a standardized checklist where everyone is looking at the same checklist and same questions, so it's more standardized. These standards are comprehensive and are challenging to implement because, you know, they require extensive documentation, lots of paperwork, lots of record keeping, right? There are so many sections in the standard, detailed record keeping requirements. The site needs to have a strong food safety culture in place, right? Without strong food safety culture, I mean, you will end up finding significant gaps in the program. Thorough training program for the employees, that's really important as well. And a comprehensive understanding of complex standards, which involves large volume of paperwork, record keeping, demanding continuous monitoring of processes, which is really important, right? Making sure that the team understands, you know, how the processes are working, and the need to demonstrate effective corrective actions when they identified issues. So if there are any findings, make sure that the corrective actions are done. And those are some of the things that auditors will look for during the audit. It also demands a robust and well-documented system across all aspects of food production. So Documentation is really important, your standard operating procedures, your sanitation procedures, your HACCP plan. Make sure those are robust and it reflects all the correct information, because auditors read those information and then they audit against the record keeping, right? So the big question is, how do we get ready for these types of extensive audits and also pass the audit? So this webinar will focus on strategic planning and commitment to ensure sites will be well prepared before the audit, explore the importance of audits, why audits are so important, because customers are asking for it, retailers are asking for it, and the key elements needed to maximize the effectiveness in fostering collaboration and continuous improvement. So during this webinar, we'll be covering some key topics that will guide you to focus on some key areas for audit preparation and planning. So key topics, strategic planning and commitment. So these are the common areas that the management should be focusing on. Senior management commitment, which is really important, team commitment and planning, positive food safety culture, how do you foster positive food safety culture among workers, project management, right? If a site is preparing for the initial audit, how do you plan for the projects, making sure that projects will be completed on time. So these are the key topics for strategic planning, which requires senior management commitment, team commitment and planning and all that. So this is really important. How do you get senior management support? I mean, this is a pretty interesting topic now, right? I don't know if you want to put some information in the chat. How can someone get a senior management support? For example, having meetings on a continuous basis and explain that a team needs to have a plan, right? And they will need support to execute the standard requirements. So having continuous meetings with the senior management is really important. Management needs to provide employee resources and financial resources, right, to support the program. Because if there are lack of resources, then obviously the program is not going anywhere. And then how can you plan for the audit, right? Making sure that management is available for meetings and questions. So this is how you can get senior management support. So the bottom line is there must be a clear communication between senior management, middle management, and workers. And that's why this standard is set up that way, why there's an open communication from senior management all the way down to the workers. Everyone sits around the table, right, and discuss, how to write procedures, right, how to plan for the audits, what we need to do, what are the timelines. So that's really important. I would also highly recommend one of the senior managements taking a training course, so they're aware of the standard requirements, so they can work with the team and provide support as well. And based on my experience being in the food industry for so many years, I'm still seeing some significant gaps in terms of communication between middle management, so QA team, or production managers, supervisors, with the senior management. So it's very important that the communication is open and that you're looking for support from management. Financial resources can be provided to take external training classes, because these standards are, pretty strict. Take HACCP training classes, PCQI training classes, internal audit, regulatory requirements, training on standard requirements, and other trainings that will be useful to the team, because the goal is to make sure that the team is competent, right, to execute the program. And if there's lack of competency among the team members.
Progress the slide. We can't see the slide you're talking on. Just go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just there you go. Yeah.
Oh. Can you see the slide now?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Okay. Just want to make sure you're on the right slide.
Okay. Yeah. Team commitment and planning. Okay. There has to be a diverse team, right? And these are representatives from different departments, because they're responsible for representing the department, right? For example, QA, production, sanitation, procurement, maintenance. So please make sure that the team is balanced and they're all committed, to move the program forward and get ready for the audit. Positive, foster positive food safety culture. How do you do that? That involves, empowering the workers, make them feel part of the team. And this requires, working with the workers at all levels of organization and making sure they get support and that they feel part of the team. And this is really important. Project management, come up with projects, assign team members, to manage projects, to ensure that the policies and procedures are getting prepared on time and executed in a timely manner. Example, assign maintenance team, sanitation team, and other team to write their own policies and procedures so that they understand the standard requirements and will be more confident to represent themselves during the audit as well. Because during the audit, each team member has to represent their own department, right? So these are some of the key areas that needs to be focused on during the planning process for the audit. So importance of planning. Planning plays a vital role for a successful audit. Don't be caught scrambling, last minute. And that's what I've seen sometimes, site is scrambling last minute because they don't have time to prepare for the audit, and it doesn't look too good. And then when the audit happens, the results are not good. I've seen our management for help, ask team members for help. Anyone can pitch in, that would be great. So please prepare well ahead of time, because when the audit comes, people panic. So make sure that the team is not scrambling last minute. So senior management commitment. What is all that about? Why is it important to have senior management commitment? It's basically setting expectations and culture of food safety and quality, right? Because the communication starts with the senior management. Senior management plays a vital role by committing and ensuring that food safety program is being fully executed and supported at all levels of organization. It is the responsibility of senior management to set expectations and establish a positive food safety culture, create a mindset that prioritizes food safety and quality. And that can happen, with more continuous conversations with the workers, talking with the managers, going to the senior management and asking for support. I have seen one of the examples is that I've seen the senior management has given company-wide talk where they had set up expectations on what is expected, and that the company is in the process of getting certified, and that everyone has to support each other and work as a team to meet the common goal. So the expectation has to be set up upfront with the workers. Otherwise, workers would not know, like why so many responsibilities are being assigned to them. So everything needs to be explained to the workers on the floor, managers, supervisors, and members in the team. Management must be reviewing policies and procedures with the managers and supervisors on a continuous basis. Managers and supervisors who work in a different department, they get busy. So make sure that they understand the actual practices so that there are no surprises during the audit. Allocate adequate resources by providing financial resources and employee resources, right, to avoid failures in the program, and to ensure that there's sufficient budget set aside for food safety programs and investing in training and education for employees. Okay, so these are some of the financial resources that can be provided by the senior management. Ensuring that the food safety management system is implemented and followed. Come up with the schedules to conduct program reviews throughout the year to ensure food safety management system is implemented and followed. Reviews of programs should not be done last minute. Review is a continuous process. And if any changes are being made in the policies and procedures, make sure that those are reviewed and approved. And participate in senior management meetings, management review meetings, and ask for support, identify gaps, and come up with solutions. Focus on continuously improving good manufacturing practices, alignment of procedures and policies, and process improvement to avoid unnecessary hurdles in the process. Come up with some KPIs, that's the continuous improvement with improved matrix. Come up with KPIs with attainable targets to measure performance of the program. Example, no major critical findings during internal GMP inspections and during external audits, right? That's what the expectation is. Those are the key performance indicators that can measure the performance, how the program is doing. Reduction of customer complaints, reduction of products going on hold, right? So come up with some KPIs and try to work on those key areas from a continuous improvement standpoint. Team commitment and planning. Okay. So this is really important. I mean, this is pretty much straightforward. Leadership commitment, open communications, have more continuous team meetings, scheduling internal audit. This is really important. Make sure that the internal audit is conducted on a continuous basis throughout the year and not like, last minute before the audit. Because based on my experience, I've seen that, companies end up giving, 100%, or they just have a few findings, and then during the audit, there's some significant number of findings. So it kind of looks like a rushed job. So go over the sections in the audit checklist and say, okay, this many sections I'm going to do it in Q1, this many sections I'm going to audit in Q2 or Q3 or Q4. So just spread the internal audit throughout the year. And please make sure to take internal auditing training classes. You're going to learn more techniques, how to do internal audit, and maintain, independency during the internal audit. So assign someone else to audit maintenance department, assign someone else to audit sanitation department, and all that other areas, in the checklist, so that they don't end up auditing their own section. So that is really important. Monitoring is important. Make sure that all the monitoring records are in place. Nothing is missing. Fix the issues. If there are any findings, make sure corrective actions are in place. And these are some of the things that auditors now look for. What was the finding? Okay, great. We all know that there will be findings, right, at a facility. So what did you do about it? Well, here's the corrective action, right? To close the loop. You have to close the loop. So that's really important. And make sure to reduce the number of findings from a continuous improvement standpoint. Auditors don't like to see repeat findings, and the repeat findings in the facility. Then you have to do root cause analysis and come up with a corrective action plan. So it's all about trend analysis of records, okay? Try to find the gaps and then get ready for the audit. Find the gaps, solve the issues so that, those issues don't come up during the audit. So here's a poll question. I think Danny's gonna take up on this one.
Yeah,
Which
I
of the
will go
following are most important for a company to demonstrate food safety culture during an audit? Is it training, recognition, communication, empowerment? We touched briefly on how important the food safety culture is. How do you promote, food safety culture? What are some of the, recognitions, that's given to the workers? So if you can.
We'll give them just a couple more seconds to get their thoughts into the poll.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and close that poll. Okay, so our number one most important is 77% communication of how important it is, which you spoke to that. And we'll speak more about that. 64% training, right? All types of training, I'm sure, which we'll cover a little bit more too. And then neck and neck at 41 and 43% is that empowerment and recognition. So we can see that all of them are equally almost important, but with that communication training leading the way. So I think that will really be pivotal here with your next slide, Hina, on positive food safety culture.
Right. So as we can see, communication is important, training the employees, that's very important. Make sure that, management is investing in employees, empower them, right? Especially the team leaders, to make some certain decisions so that they feel part of the team. So that's really important. And this is a big change, to have a positive food safety culture, right? In the company, it's more like a continuous improvement program. There is no yes and no answer, right? You have to just keep working with the workers, look at the feedback, and you can always send questionnaires out, ask for the feedback, put some key questions in the questionnaire. Do you feel part of the team? Do you feel that you're empowered, and all those key questions, and get the anonymous feedback, right? And that's when you're gonna learn, okay, Some employees are happy, some employees are not happy, where the gaps are. So food safety culture plays, an important role. It's all about shared values, beliefs, and behaviors. Assess your food safety culture. A strong culture of food safety involves commitment from everyone within the organization. This includes focusing on cleanliness, responsibility, adherence to food safety regulations and guidelines. So there's lots to do, lots of responsibilities. Food safety culture is a commitment to consumers, and where the impact of unsafe practices that can have severe consequences on public well-being, right? So if there is no food safety culture, it's going to reflect, how many products are going on hold, why you're having so many GMP findings, why so many customer complaints are coming in. So those are the areas you need to button up, and these areas should be under your KPI, to monitor the performance. Come up with, open means of communication to foster an environment where employees feel comfortable reporting food safety concerns. And we all know it's just a human nature. Some employees don't feel comfortable. They will not say, okay, that employee is doing that, and that employee is doing that, but have a suggestion box. There's another way of doing it. So they can put their, concerns in there. And that's another way where management can pull the information and, work on the issues. Make sure to encourage employees for transparency purpose and encourage employees to actively shape and maintain food safety practices. How do you do that, right? Communication, training, right? Involve them in decision-making processes related to food safety to instill a sense of ownership and responsibility. Consider rewards as well. So the employees need to feel part of the team. They need to feel that they own this program. And those are the big pluses, to kind of make sure that there's a positive food safety culture in place. So this is another tool that the team can use when they're working on the project. This is a responsibility assignment matrix, which focuses on project management, that helps define roles and responsibilities for a project. It includes who's responsible for the project. That's really important, right? Because if you assign too many people to too many projects, then, the responsibility will not be there, specific responsibilities. So when you're assigning project, make sure that assign the responsible person who understands, to work on those policies and procedures. It all depends on competency. Who's accountable for that project, right? To make sure that the project is getting completed on time. And this is another thing that I'm seeing, that especially for the initial audit, the team starts off pretty well, okay, we're gonna do it. But as they're, working on the process to get ready for the internal audit, they see all these hurdles in the process, especially on responsibilities, right? Especially if a team is small, so that becomes very challenging. So, pace yourself, don't feel discouraged. You can do it, but make sure that, there's an assignment matrix, who's going to do what, and then give them deadlines. The team provides input, how it will impact the project work, right? So if I'm going to write a procedure and then someone else doesn't agree, then what, right? So it involves everyone to make sure that everyone agrees on those procedures, especially those key team members who are responsible in the areas. The team has to be kept in the loop on the progress made on the project as well. So that means continuous meetings, open communications. If you see that, there's some gaps in this area, then, the team member is not ready, provide more training, set aside some time for training. And the whole goal is to be successful, right? To pass the audit. So please make sure that, the team is ready for the audit. So this is another area that you can focus on, the importance of managing the risk matrix, identify document risk across departments, come up with a cross-functional team where, they understand the program requirements, work on training. If you don't have enough resources in-house, you can always go to the training partners. You can, work with consultants who can come and provide training on best practices. Look at the competency level within your team and prioritize soft skills. Make sure that the team has an audit team leader, right, to lead this project. because working towards a certification is very demanding. So there has to be a team leader that can navigate, right, the process and the projects to ensure that you will meet a deadline, because senior management will give you a deadline, right, by such and such time. They want a certificate in the hand, which means they have to play a vital role as well, right, to support the program. So it involves everyone. It takes a village to be successful. That's all I have to say. But please have soft skills, work with your workers, and if you need any external support, then always reach out. But come up with a plan. Come up with an assignment matrix. And this slide is basically, it's an overview, of risk matrix, what it means. So it talks about responsibility, accountability, consulting, make sure that, input is based on how it will impact the project work. Informed, everyone needs to be kept in the loop on project progress. So this is a great tool to use when working on projects. So this project management table, which includes brief description of definitions, so use this type of responsibility assignment matrix when working on any task assigned. Provide input and have open communication with the team so that everyone is in the loop on the project status. I don't know if you have anything like this, but I think this is a great example, to use when working on policies and procedures and getting feedback from everyone. Responsibilities, accountability, getting input from your team members, whether they're in agreement or disagreement, and then everyone needs to be kept informed, the status of the project. So that's really important. So this was the table that I was talking about. Project status, create SSOPs, review and approve SSOPs, train against SSOPs. So this is a great example. And you can probably assign, different people, prioritize, some projects, procedures, policies, and all that. So hopefully this will be helpful. Team soft skills. This is important. Soft skills, also known as interpersonal or people skills, offer numerous benefits for both individuals and organizations. These skills, such as communication, teamwork, collaboration, and problem solving, involves workplace relationships, leading to a more positive and productive work environment, which means work as a team. You don't have to get angry, you don't have to get disgruntled. I mean, we get it, but please have effective communications, work with a team, and stay organized, right? Because this is a tough one, right? Preparing for the initial audit, or even for recertification audits. So soft skills, it goes a long way. Here's another poll question that has come up.
We'll go ahead and launch that poll for everyone. Okay, and this poll is: how long before your upcoming audit do you begin the active planning process? We'll take just another few seconds here to get your answers in. All right, we'll go ahead and close that poll and see what you guys have for your overall planning. Let's share those results here. Looks like we have a good spread there, Hina. We've got 30% have the full year planning, which is really great, right? And then it kind of goes down from there. With the majority of us doing that 4 to 5 month planning, right? Which is kind of that cycle we get ourselves into where we start really planning 4 to 5 months out instead of really throughout the full year. And then we do have a 12% at 3 months or less. So let's.
Right. I think that's typical, you know, and that's where, especially with the initial audits, right? Most of the standards, they define clearly that it will take about 6 months from point A to point Z, right? To kind of, you know, put the programs together, make sure that the programs have been implemented, that all the monitoring records are on file, and that employees are all trained, you know, based on, you know, the requirements in the standard, and then, you know, set up some dates for the audits, right? So it takes about 6 months, but I think that's a good timeline, 4 to 5 months. I've set up programs, you know, where they said, hey, Hina, senior management wants us to get audited, you know, within the next 4 to 5 months. Yes, that's doable. It's doable because, you know, everyone has to pay attention. Everyone has to come up with the deadlines and work together. And you know, normally I kind of do, you know, continuous meetings with them on a weekly basis. And I think your team needs to do continuous meetings on a weekly basis to make sure that things are moving along. Otherwise, you know, companies will scramble last minute, and then, yeah, it's not going to look good. So the momentum has to be there, okay? And please focus on the questions in the checklist. You might have all those procedures already, and I know that the questions in the standards are, you know, very comprehensive, so you can just update or upgrade those current policies. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, okay? But if you don't have some of the procedures, then obviously you can write some new procedures. But please work with the team. Please work with the managers and supervisors who are responsible in that area. You know, don't try to create procedures for them, because then that's when they're not going to understand, and then they have to represent themselves during the audit. And when the auditor is going to call, you know, the managers or supervisors to represent the department, they really need to understand, you know, what this question means. And that's when you do internal audit, involve everyone. Make sure everyone understands the questions in the internal audit. Be as hard, you know, on yourself. That's the only time you're going to find gaps. Don't try to second guess and put a check mark. Okay, you know, this is okay. That's not going to work. So internal audit plays a pretty big role. You know, this is your internal audit. Auditor cannot say, okay, you have hundreds of findings. I mean, that's the whole intent of having an internal audit, right? To find findings so that you can, you know, be prepared for the audit, right? And these are the pre-planning, you know, tips, you know, before the audit. But yes, give yourself some time and come up with some, you know, timelines. So planning. So we're gonna touch base on planning. How do you plan, you know, to have a successful audit? We covered quite a few, you know, slides previously, you know, senior management commitment, open communications, training, coming up with deadlines, you know, on project assignments. So all these things needs to be pre-planned, and obviously continuous meetings, you know, with all levels of organization. And if you need any financial support, or if you need any employee support, please let the senior management know that, hey, we need more people in the team, right? And one thing that I've recommended when I had been doing audits or, you know, consulting work, hire a person, you know, like a document control coordinator, and that person can, it goes a long way. That person can go around and collect records, you know, make sure that things are happening on time. They will get hold of managers and supervisors that, hey, these things are not happening, you know, you have passed the deadline, let's get it going. So that person plays a big, important role, and it has helped. From my experience, I've seen that, you know, companies, you know, in terms of record keeping and, you know, getting, you know, having a successful audit. Okay, so think about it, and, you know, try to get an extra team person if you don't have enough people in the team. So planning, come up with audit requirements, come up with objectives, timeline we spoke about, schedule meetings, share the responsibilities across the audit team members. You refer to the regulatory requirements because there have been some significant changes, you know, in the industry by FDA, like traceability 204. They've given some deadlines on that, and every manufacturing company has to go through that. FSMA came out, you know, a while back, foreign supply verification program. So you have to keep abreast with all the changes also happening in the industry. Okay, so who's the regulatory team member in your team, you know, who's responsible for letting the team know that there are some changes coming along or some changes had happened? because all these audit checklists now, there's a whole section on regulatory requirement and the changes and how the company is preparing, for all these requirements. Because you don't want FDA or USDA to walk in and the site is not ready. So please be aware of that. Prepare an audit checklist. You can come up with the schemes audit checklist and make that as an internal audit, so that the same questions will be looked by the auditor and the same questions will be looked by your team members during the internal audit, so that there'll be no surprises. Make sure our procedures and plans, assessments are current and up to date, and that's really important. And the reason I'm emphasizing on this is because auditors are new. They're going to come to your site for the first time, right? So they're going to rely on your procedures and policies, whatever is written there, right? And then they will look at the records, right? Prove it to me that it's happening. So make sure the procedures and assessments and plans are correct. It has been agreed by the team, and make sure that the backup records to support those procedures and policies. And if there are any changes, there should be a person in the team who should be responsible for making changes on those policies and procedures, right? Any recent changes, so all those needs to be updated with correct version numbers. And that's something auditors look for as well. Correct version numbers, which policies and procedures are current. Double check records, who's reviewing it, who's approving it. And sometimes, if I'm responsible for filling out a form, then someone should be responsible for reviewing those records to make sure that the forms have been completed correctly, making sure no whiteout is used, no pencil is used, there are no gaps in the form, because records will tell you a story, right? Conformity or non-conformity. So it's very important that the person who completes the record, the person is trained how to complete the record and what to write, right? So that's really important. And make sure that someone else in the team goes and reviews the records, okay? That's really important. And if you see significant gaps, then come up with a corrective action or retrain the particular person, who's completing the form. And make sure that all the records are really available during the audit. Okay, auditors don't like to sit around and wait around for the records because they have, a certain number of days to complete the audit, right? So make sure the records are filed, they're secured, and they're all collected from the production floor. And they're all filed, in the office or in filing cabinets and are lock and key. And it should be really available during the audit. Okay, so these are the planning process. Where are the records, easily accessible to the records. Make sure that the procedures are all accurate. Make sure that the thorough internal audit has been done. Looking at the same questions that the auditor is going to look at, right? So that's really important. So this is power of the internal audit that I covered in the previous slide. Do a thorough internal audit, spread it throughout the year and come up with a better ways, to conduct internal audit. Spend more time on the production floor. Internal audit is not only about reviewing procedures and records. You have to make observations on the floor to make sure that the employees are following, good manufacturing practices. Okay. So audit planning, make sure that the team is ready for the audit. You have come across, planning process, pre-planning process, right? Working on the procedures and policies, collecting records, conducting internal audit, and make sure that the records are in place, right? And then making sure that obviously collecting all the objective evidence, record reviews, interviews, and observations, those are important as well. So these are the key areas that needs to be focused on, to get ready for the audit. Because auditors now look for objective evidence. If it's ain't documented, it never got done. And I've been doing audits for 23 years, and they all say, okay, Hina, we did it. I'm like, okay, if it's not documented, how can I as an auditor write in my report, right, that you completed this question? I'm not gonna do that. So if it's ain't documented, it never happened. And if you have any findings in the records, please come up with the corrective actions, okay? And you can show that to the auditor as well. Like, hey, we did something about it. And that's what auditors want to see, because this is a systems audit, okay? It brings, all the procedures are in place. If anyone leaves the company, the system will be there. So auditor is cross-checking the system, make sure that the system does not have any gaps, significant gaps, okay? So make sure that all the objective evidence is there. Summarize the results from the audit checklist or from an internal audit, get all the findings, make sure that, your internal audit checklist is well balanced. Please put down positive findings that shows, hey, we are doing all this. But, if you have any findings, also put down non-conformities so that you can work towards it. And then identify the root cause. If you see too many repeat findings, like, hey, that person is not washing hands, that person is not wearing hair nets, there's significant number of repeat findings. So please come up with the root cause, what's happening, how come employees are not listening. And that again goes back to the positive food safety culture, right? How do you implement all these practices, right? How do you change the mindset of the employees? Why these employees are not listening? And that's why you have to empower managers and supervisors, give them some authority and ownership to take some action towards those employees, okay? But also recognize them, make them feel part of the team, and maybe, the mindset might change. And these are some of the important areas that the company needs to focus on. Otherwise, you will end up getting too many repeat findings, and it's not going to look good, because auditors normally, from the minor findings, that can end up just giving an overarching, major finding if they see too many repeat findings, in the program. So focus on the repeat findings, especially on the GMP, inspections, and we're not doing inspections on the floor and all that. Provide results to the stakeholders and senior management. Talk to the team members, talk to the workers. Hey, we found all these gaps in the area, man. We need your help, okay? Because if they don't know, then how can they improve, right, in those areas? I've seen companies, put down all the findings, on a communication board, right? Then employees go, oh, wow, these are the findings that we got. So it's all about communication, bring them in the team, make them feel part of the team, So that's really important. Monitoring, as I said, keep track and document the implementation of all the corrective actions. Review all those, findings and corrective actions, and see if those findings are coming down or not. So what is the secret of continuous monitoring? Continuous meetings, right? Work on repeat deviations and gain consensus. Revisit previous audit results. So if you've been audited previously and this is not your initial audit, then please go over all the findings, from the previous audit, and make sure that those have been corrected, and it's not going to pop up during the recertification audit, because then auditor might probably end up giving a major finding if there's a repeat findings, that shows that the root cause is not working. Okay, so work on the findings, review all the non-conformities, and address all the corrective actions and findings. Come up with preventive action plans to prevent those findings from reoccurring. Verification plays a big role. It focuses on ensuring that processes and procedures are followed. Do what you say. So please, review all the records, look at all the conformities, non-conformities, and make sure that all the records are in place. Whatever the procedure is saying, make sure that the records are collecting those information, and sign off on the records. Direct observations on the key activities. There's also part of verification when you're doing GMP inspections. Making sure that you are making direct observations and verify the practices. So that's really important. Focus on implementation, whether the program has been implemented or not. Internal audits, inspection records, and conducting routine checks. Ask questions, are these results meeting program requirements or not? Okay, so that's all part of verification. Do what you say, right? And then the next slide is covering more like working with a team, and then monitoring all the corrective actions and audit findings, and monitoring all the records. Have follow-up meetings, to kind of revisit your program, go over your goals and all that. That's all part of verification. And that plays a really important role, in preparation towards a successful audit. Come up with the timelines. tracking, implementation of audit recommendations and all that, conducting follow-ups. So what is validation? It's a big difference between verification and validation, right? Validation is, a systems check, gauging success, whether the program is, successful or not, right? And there's so many programs in the food safety management system, right? Prerequisite programs, HACCP program. So validation is, looking for any unsatisfactory trends in the program, okay, whether the system is working or not, okay? And that again goes back to communication and training, right? If you see significant gaps, say in the pest control program or customer complaints, that means, there's a failure, in the system itself. And then, you'll have to do root cause analysis and come up with a preventive action plan. So validate all the program by looking at the records, because records will tell you a story, right? Conformity and non-conformity. From there, you can say, okay, we are finding too many gaps in the sanitation program, during pre-op, we are finding that, equipment is not getting clean. So that's how you validate sanitation program and kind of write a summary that you looked at 90 days of records and, I'm finding significant gaps. The trend is showing that there's unsatisfactory trend. And then, the program is not working. We can take a second look at the sanitation practices. We can look at the chemical concentrations and all that, and then come up with some solutions, okay? So it's always looking for the trend, the performance of the program. Verification is collecting records, okay? Verifying that the program is working or not, but validation is looking for some trends, gauging success, whether the program is success or not, okay? So these are some of the key areas, that we had itemized for audit success secrets. It starts with adequate preparation in advance and not last minute. That's really important. We cover some timelines, some projects, using, assessment matrix, to give some deadlines and responsibilities and do follow-ups. Continuous support from senior management, ask for resources. If you think that, you're bogged down, you need more people, and explain to them this program is comprehensive. That's why I had recommended very strongly to have one of the senior managements attend, SQF, BRC, or, any of the schemes that you guys are working on, or FDA's, 21 CFR, program trainings and all that. Foster positive food safety culture, because if employees are not happy and they feel that they're not empowered, they're not going to follow any work instructions or rules, right? So, and also it's going to reflect in your food safety program. Your GMP inspections, there'll be lots of findings. Do a thorough internal audit with qualified staff, make sure that the staff is qualified, they understand the questions, they understand that, looking for the records, and make sure that they've taken internal auditing training class of where they can understand all the techniques. Keep all the documentations clear, standardized in a centralized location for easy access, so that the audits can go smoothly, okay? Record keeping is really important. Don't try to look for the records last minute, because, then the audit's not gonna go well. That's why I get a document coordinator. That will be really helpful, I'm telling you. Making sure that the staff is confident in leading the audit, and that's really important. Confident attitude is a win. And I know you'll be confident because, if you pre-plan and you do a thorough internal audit, talk to everyone, and, the team needs to feel confident, the audit will be successful. The auditors are smart. They can judge it when they walk in the room and they start reviewing the programs, whether the site is ready or not, okay? They can sense it. So make sure that the staff is confident in leading the audit. I mean, you guys know all the procedures and policies, right? It's just, be confident when you're talking to the auditor, okay? Be cooperative, don't argue or try to confuse the auditor, right? Because that's not gonna go a long way, okay? If there's disagreement, there's an appeal process and all that, you can appeal to the certification body, but if you're gonna start fighting with the auditor, towards the closing meeting or during the audit, it's not gonna go too well. And that's some rules, it's all written in the standard, how the audit needs to get conducted, and, between the auditor and the client, right? And ask for help, right? You can use consultants, you can ask, for more employees to be in the team, ask for help, to make your audit successful. So now we are into question and answers.
Thank you, Hina. I will go ahead and go through some of those questions. So great points on senior management. What is your advice on how to get senior management's engagement?
So my advice is that just have a face-to-face meeting with them, involve them into team meetings, and make sure that they're involved. I know senior management is really busy, but you have to have communication with them. And most of the standards, they will require management review meetings. And that's when senior management has to sit down and look at some of the KPIs and, some of the gaps that, the team is finding and how they can support the program. So you have to be strong. Yeah, you have to engage senior management, and send them on some training classes so they can understand, oh my goodness, wow, yeah, this standard is comprehensive. My team needs more help, otherwise how would they know, right? So
yeah, let those trainers do the work for you too, right? Yeah, I love that idea of having more senior managers attend those training courses. When you spoke about planning, what have you seen from the consulting side and just general and clients? What are the most common nonconformances when a site hasn't properly prepared? They've only kind of given themselves that 3 to 4 month window before that audit occurs. What are the most common things you see from a nonconformance standpoint?
So I've seen, gaps in the record keeping. Okay. Forms are there, or sometimes, the procedures, don't have forms. But the person who's assigned to complete the forms, they have not been completing the forms. There has been a significant gap. So record keeping, when we are working on putting the program together, those are the significant gaps that I'm finding on record keeping. And also the procedures and policies are not updated, they're not talking the requirements from the standard, it's very basic. And, as we have seen the trend in the industry where, initially, like, 20 years ago, companies were doing GMP audits and just basic good distribution warehouse audits, the procedures and policies were kind of very, very, very simple. But, if you are moving towards, more towards the GFSI level audits, make sure that you're looking at the questions in the standard and make sure that you are putting methods and responsibilities in the procedures and policies, and make sure that, there are forms to support those methods and responsibilities. Okay. So it's record keeping.
Great advice. We have a question here about an auditor. Obviously, you spent many years in the auditing side of the business. What are the 3 keys to gauging a good food safety culture at a facility? So how would you gauge that? What from an auditor's perspective?
All right. So again, this is how do you foster food safety culture, right? So what I have seen is that, make them feel part of the team, right? And we also see language barriers, right? They don't speak up too much, So when you're doing inspections and all that, you ask them any question, they're shy or they don't want to speak up, right? But make sure that the immediate department managers and supervisors kind of empowering them, making them feel part of the team, and then kind of getting them ready for the audit, right? Let them know that, it's okay, don't be shy. And based on my experience, they all have the right answers. I've hardly seen that they will give me something wrong, because they know what they're doing, right? But they kind of get nervous. So that needs to be taken out from the equation. Make sure that the team is not nervous. And the more you're going to involve them in the team meetings, the more you're going to talk to them, ask them some questions and get them ready for the audit. So when you're doing GMP inspections, ask them questions. When you're on the production floor, ask like one of the employees, hey, give me some examples of GMPs. For example, when you come to work, what we are supposed to do? The person should say, oh, we need to wash hands, we should wear hairnets and, the protective clothing. So ask some key questions, and kind of get them going, why they're doing all this, why they're wearing hairnet and all that. And ask them, why you're wearing a hairnet? Well, you don't want hair to fall in the product, right? So get them engaged. And that's when they're going to feel proud of themselves. They know that, hey, we are doing something good, to the company. I'm contributing something good towards the company. And that's how you slowly change the food safety culture. Okay. Have them speak up.
It's not just one person's job, right? It's everyone's job. That's why I liked those slides on RACI, right? I think you could probably do a whole webinar just on RACI, but not only building the responsibility, accountability consultant informed in the SOPs, but also what does it mean for their jobs? What are they responsible for? Who's accountable? What, who do we need to inform? So it's that engagement cycle that you spoke to.
Right, and auditors will go to those employees directly, like they're gonna start with the receiving and shipping probably, they will go to the workers, receivers and shippers and say, hey, show me the record of, inspection of the truck, what do you guys do? So they need to be prepared in answering the question. Okay, they're not going to the warehouse manager and getting the right answers, okay? So make sure you ask all these key questions, as you are doing internal audit or doing GMP inspections in those areas. It's just not you walking the floor. Make sure you're talking to the employees, okay? Making direct observations.
Excellent. So just to close for today, of all the types of tips and tricks that you provided today, what are the one or two that you would prioritize? If I wanted to accomplish something this week that's going to impact my planning of my audit and to be more successful, what are the one or two key takeaways that you should start this week?
I think you should come up with some meeting agendas and, have communication with the management, right? Because you cannot do it by yourself. You need to look at, what area you want to work on, right? Send an email out, have face-to-face conversation, and just, set up a time. This is the time we're going to have meetings, and this is where we're going to discuss, and then roll the ball from there, okay? And then just do more follow-up meetings. But that'll be a good start, communication. Okay, communication plays a vital role in this. Okay, so hopefully, I've answered your question.
Yep, nope, that's great. Project planning and being able to effectively communicate what is needed and start, to your point, delegating those responsibilities.
Right.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Hina, for taking us through with all of your great knowledge. We appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. We'll get a copy of this presentation and the overarching recording as well, and you can use that to share with others. We will have a survey upon closing, and thank you again, and we'll join you or see you next time in our next webinar.
Good luck. Good luck. You can do it. Okay. There will be some great tips. You can do it. So just go for it.
Power of encouragement. Thanks, Hina. Bye, everyone.